The great arena world of Vor glittered like a silver moon in the dark of space. It was a world built for strength. Vast stone plains, burning deserts, and mountains that cut the clouds. For ages, the galaxy's proudest warriors had come, here to prove themselves in the Great Proving, a contest where courage, skill, and endurance decided who was worthy to stand before the apex hunter, the mightiest being in known space. Ships from 100 worlds filled the skies above Vor. Some were built from smooth crystal, some from living metal, and others from dark, silent alloys that reflected no light. Each carried a champion, massive creatures with claws, scales, tusks, or armor thicker than steel. When the Terran ship, a small gray vessel called Bright Reach, landed among them, few even noticed. It looked plain and unremarkable beside the shining war cruisers of other species. But when its ramp opened, a single small figure stepped down. His name was Milo. He was human, short, thin, and light compared to the towering warriors surrounding him. He wore a simple gray suit and a small backpack. No weapons, no armor, no signs of rank or strength. His boots made small prints in the red sand as he looked around the enormous landing field. The crowd of alien competitors turned their eyes toward him. Some blinked in disbelief. Others laughed aloud. "Is this a mistake?" one growled, his voice deep and rumbling. "Perhaps the humans sent a child," another said. Milo only smiled politely and waved. "Hello," he said in a calm voice. "Where do I register for the proving?" The laughter grew louder. Several of the competitors pointed at him, shaking their heads. To them, humans were newcomers to the stars. Weak, soft, and slow. No human had ever entered the Great Proving before, but Milo didn't seem offended. He adjusted the strap on his backpack and waited patiently as the registration drone floated toward him. The drone scanned his ID chip and confirmed, "Participant Milo, species, Terran." Entry accepted. This only made the laughter echo louder. A creature made of molten rock leaned down, its face glowing like fire. "You will not last one trial, little Terran. Go home before you get lost in the dust." Milo looked up, eyes calm. "Maybe," he said, "but I'd rather see the dust up close first." The competitors gathered in the great assembly hall, a chamber large enough to hold ships inside it. Above them, holographic banners displayed the trials of the proving, the cliff of shifting gravity, the wilderness of Vor, and finally the silent hunt. At the far end of the hall, on a raised platform of stone and iron, stood the apex hunter himself, Corvan. He was enormous, his body covered in silver scales that shimmered with faint light. His eyes were like burning stars, and his presence alone made even the strongest warriors lower their heads. He did not speak often, but when he did, the sound filled the air like thunder. "The proving begins at dawn," Corvan said. "Each of you will climb the cliff. Gravity will turn against you. The strong will rise, the unworthy will fall. There is no shame in failing, only in not trying." As the warriors roared in excitement, Corvan's gaze swept across them. It paused, just for a moment, when it reached Milo. The apex hunter's eyes narrowed slightly, but he said nothing. When dawn came, the competitors stood before the cliff of shifting gravity. It was a wall of black stone that reached into the clouds. Every few moments, the pull of gravity changed, sideways, downward, or even upward. Many had trained for years just to survive this climb. Milo watched as the others prepared. Some attached sharp claws to their arms, others unfolded metallic wings or used anti-grav belts. The air buzzed with energy and confidence. Then someone laughed again. "The human has no tools. He will fall before he takes 10 steps. Milo opened his backpack quietly. Inside were ropes, hooks, and small climbing clips made of light metal. He tied the rope around his waist and checked each knot carefully. "I do have tools," he said. "Just different ones." The signal sounded. The first trial began. The competitors leaped toward the cliff, claws digging into the stone. Sparks flew. Some used power boosts to launch themselves upward. Others climbed like living tanks, carving deep scars in the wall. Milo began slowly. He tested the rock with each handhold, attached his rope carefully, and moved with patience. When the gravity shifted sideways, Some warriors screamed and fell. Milo swung his rope, shifted his weight, and kept climbing. Hours passed. The sky darkened as the sun moved behind the cliff. One by one, exhausted climbers dropped or were pulled away by the strange forces. But Milo's rhythm stayed steady. Slow, sure, and thoughtful. He whispered to himself as he moved. Don't fight it. Learn it. Let it move you. Every time the gravity changed, he adjusted his direction. He treated it not as an enemy, but as part of the climb. He used the pull to swing himself higher when others struggled to resist. By midday, only a handful of climbers remained. The molten creature, the winged reptile, the armored brute, and the small Terran. The audience watching from below had gone silent. How does he still climb? Someone asked. He has no claws, no armor, no boost. A spectator replied softly. He climbs with his mind. At last, the black cliff curved inward near the top, a near impossible section. The others tried to jump or fly, but the gravity turned sharply downward, dragging them away. Milo stopped and studied the wall. He waited. Then when the pull shifted sideways again, he swung his rope like a pendulum, used the motion to reach a hidden ledge, and pulled himself up. When he stepped onto the summit, the crowd erupted in cheers and disbelief. The small Terran had reached the top first. Milo stood there quietly, breathing hard but smiling. His fingers were raw, his arms trembled, yet his eyes were bright with satisfaction. He looked down at the massive crowd far below, filled with warriors from every world. The announcer drone hovered beside him. First to the summit, Milo of Terra. The laughter from earlier was gone. The other climbers who reached the top later looked at him differently, no longer as a joke, but as something strange and unexpected. When Milo returned to the ground, several approached him. The molten creature who had mocked him earlier lowered his head slightly. You are different, small one. You plan your strength. Milo gave a friendly nod. We humans are not the biggest or fastest, he said, so we learn to think before we leap. That night, the campfires around the proving field glowed beneath the stars. The warriors gathered in groups, sharpening their weapons and sharing food. Milo sat alone beside a small light, carefully repairing his rope and noting the gravity changes in a small book. Nearby, two alien competitors whispered to each other. He does not boast. He does not threaten. Yet he beat us all. Perhaps it was luck, said the other. But far above, on the stone balcony of the great fortress, Corvan, the apex hunter, stood watching the fields below. His keen eyes found the small Terran sitting quietly by the fire. He spoke softly, his deep voice rumbling like distant thunder. The others climbed to conquer the mountain, he said to his second in command. That one climbs to understand it. His aide tilted its scaled head. Shall I record his performance, master? Corvan nodded slowly. Yes, the small Terran bears watching. Later, as the twin moons rose, Milo looked up at the night sky. The stars above Vor shone brighter than any he had ever seen from Earth. He felt both small and endless at once. He took a deep breath and smiled. One trial done, he whispered. 2 more to go. Behind him, the wind carried faint sounds of laughter and talk, not mocking this time, but curious. The laughter had changed its tone. The warriors who once doubted him were beginning to wonder. Who was this quiet human who climbed where others fell? And far away in the shadows, the apex hunter turned away from the balcony, his eyes glowing faintly. For the first time in many cycles, he felt something unexpected. Interest. Perhaps this small Terran was more than he appeared. The sun rose slowly over the crimson plains of Vor, painting the mountains in shades of gold and red. The first trial was done, and the camp buzzed with new energy. Some warriors spoke proudly of their climbs, while others still whispered about the human who had reached the top first. They looked at him now not with laughter but with quiet curiosity, the kind one has for something they do not yet understand. Milo, the small Terran, woke early. He sat outside his small tent, cleaning his gear and writing notes in a small pad. His hands were covered with small cuts from the climb, but his eyes were bright. He was calm, focused, and already thinking about the next challenge. The announcement, a deep voice, echoed across the camp as the apex hunter's second in command, a tall reptilian being named Rethar, stepped onto the command platform. "Warriors of the Proving," he called. "The first trial tested your control of body and mind. The second will test your endurance, will, and resourcefulness." The crowd went silent. "You will enter the wilderness of Vor. 3 days and nights in the open lands. You must survive with what you carry. The storms will be fierce, and the creatures will not be kind. Those who endure until the third dawn will pass." Excitement rippled through the ranks. Some warriors roared, others stretched their arms, eager for the challenge. The wilderness of Vor was legendary, filled with harsh weather, scarce food, and wild beasts that stalked even the strongest hunters. Milo listened carefully. He opened his small pack and checked his supplies. A water filter, some dried food, a coil of rope, and a light sheet of emergency fabric that could become shelter. No weapons, no armor, just tools and knowledge. 3 days, he murmured to himself. That's not so bad. I've camped longer. Nearby, a massive warrior made of stone laughed. "You think you can survive, little Terran? Vor will crush you." Milo smiled softly. "Maybe, but I'll try my best." Into the wild at noon, the gates of the wilderness opened. A wave of heat and dry wind swept through. The ground was cracked and uneven, filled with strange plants that glowed faintly under the twin suns. The warriors stepped out in groups, their large shadows stretching across the sand. Milo followed behind, walking calmly, watching how others moved and where they went. Some ran forward, hoping to find shelter first. Others stayed near the cliffs, using their strength to gather heavy materials. Milo walked to a cluster of tall, thin trees. They had leaves that shimmered blue and gave off cool shade. He studied the ground, touched the soil, and smiled. "Water passes here sometimes," he said softly. He took out his small folding shovel and dug near the base of the trees. After some time, the soil became damp. He placed his filter tube into the moist layer and began collecting water in a small container. From a distance, 2 other competitors watched him. "The Terran digs while we hunt," one said. "Let him. The small one will waste his time while real hunters find meat," said the other, turning away. But as the hours passed, the sun grew hotter and the wind turned sharp. Many of the large warriors began to tire quickly. Their heavy armor and thick skin could not handle the endless heat waves. Some tried to rest under rocks that offered little shade. Milo, meanwhile, stayed under the trees. He built a small shelter using his fabric sheet and rope, shaping it like a half tent. He set a simple trap using sticks and a piece of dried fruit. Not to catch big creatures, but small insects or birds for food. By evening, when the others were panting with exhaustion, he had fresh water, shade, and a quiet place to rest. The first night, as darkness fell, the wilderness came alive. The air filled with distant howls, soft roars, and the hum of unseen wings. Strange lights flickered on the horizon like stars that had fallen to the ground. Many warriors lit large fires, hoping to keep the creatures away. But the smoke from their fires attracted attention instead. The wilderness was home to many night hunters that followed scent and light. Milo sat quietly beside a smokeless fire he had built using special stones from his pack. The flames glowed faintly blue, giving warmth but no scent. He ate a few pieces of dried fruit and watched the stars. Suddenly, a shadow passed near his shelter, a tall figure with glowing eyes. It was one of the reptilian hunters, limping badly. His leg was cut and his breathing was heavy. Milo stood slowly. "You're hurt," the reptilian growled softly, embarrassed.
"I felt pit trap."
"Leg torn, leave me." Milo shook his head. No one should be left alone here. He helped the warrior sit near the tent and took out a small bandage spray from his kit. The reptilian looked surprised. "You carry healing tools?" "Just in case," Milo said, smiling. "Humans are good at fixing things, even broken ones." The reptilian stared at him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Thank you, small Terran." The second day, when dawn came, storms swept across the plains. Silver lightning, red dust, and winds that howled like living creatures. Many of the large warriors struggled to move. Their heavy frames made them slow in the storm. Milo stayed low, moving between rocks, using his rope to hold his shelter down. When he saw others struggling, he offered small pieces of rope to help them tie their covers. Some accepted. Others refused out of pride. At midday, when the storm passed, many competitors' camps were destroyed. Milo's shelter still stood. The reptilian warrior from the night before was awake, his wound already closing. "You saved me," he said. "I will remember this." Milo shook his head. "We just helped each other. That's what survival means." The second night, that night was quieter. The storm had driven away most of the beasts. The surviving warriors began to gather near the same area for safety. A few even came to sit near Milo's small camp, curious about the humans' strange ways. He showed them how to build small traps and how to store water more efficiently. He taught them to look for the blue-leafed trees that meant underground moisture. "You see," he explained, "strength is good, but the land doesn't care about muscles. It listens to patience." The group listened. Even those who once laughed at him stayed silent now. They had begun to see something unusual in this small Terran, a calm strength that did not need to boast. The third day. By the third morning, many had fallen out of the challenge. The wilderness had claimed them with heat, hunger, or exhaustion. Only a few still stood, Milo among them. He walked with quiet steps, marking his trail with small stones. His energy was steady because he had managed his food and water carefully. At noon, as the final sun reached its highest point, a signal flare rose in the sky. It was the call for all remaining competitors to return to the camp. The trial had ended. When Milo returned, the crowd waiting outside the gates looked astonished. The small Terran came back walking calmly, carrying not only his own gear but also a piece of shelter cloth he had repaired for another competitor. Rethar, the second in command, stepped forward. "You survived with honor, Terran." Milo nodded politely. "Thank you." Rethar tilted his head. "Most who enter the wilderness come back angry or afraid. You look at peace. Why?" Milo smiled softly. "Because I learned a lot. The land teaches if you listen." The apex hunter's words later, as the survivors rested, the apex hunter himself appeared. His massive form cast a long shadow over the camp. Every warrior stood silent as he walked through the rows, studying each one carefully. When he reached Milo, he stopped. His golden eyes looked down at the small human. "You faced Vor's wilderness without armor," he said in a low, rumbling voice. "You gave help when you could have kept your strength for yourself. Tell me why." Milo looked up, meeting his gaze. "Because no one survives alone forever. Someday I'll need help too." Korvan's eyes glowed faintly. "Many powerful hunters do not understand that truth. Yet you do." He turned to the gathered crowd and spoke louder. "This Terran shows that the mind and spirit can be greater than the body. Remember his example." The warriors bowed their heads in respect, not out of fear but out of understanding. Milo, feeling his cheeks warm, simply nodded. "I'm honored, sir." That night, as stars filled the sky again, Milo sat outside his tent. The wind was soft now, carrying the sound of quiet conversation. The laughter in the camp was different, friendly, light, and filled with respect. Milo looked up at the stars and whispered, "2 trials done. 1 left." He didn't know what waited for him in the next test, but deep inside he felt ready. The others might still see him as small, but he knew that true strength had nothing to do with size. Somewhere on the high balcony, the apex hunter watched him once more and said quietly, "He learns faster than any I've seen. The small Terran may yet change what we believe about strength." And so, the wilderness of Vor ended not with a roar of battle, but with quiet respect, earned by a small human who had survived through patience, kindness, and clever thinking. The second trial had ended, and peace returned to the plains of Vor. The survivors rested inside the great camp, tired, sunburned, and covered in dust, but proud that they had endured what the wilderness threw at them. The laughter that once followed the small Terran had changed. Now when Milo walked past, the others nodded to him with respect. He had helped many of them, shared his water, tied their shelters, and treated wounds. His quiet kindness had become known across the camp, but the great proving was not over. There was still one more challenge before the final test, one that would test not just strength or patience, but heart. The announcement at dawn, a deep gong sounded across the camp. Every warrior gathered near the center as the apex hunter's second in command, Rethar, stepped forward. His silver armor glowed in the rising sun. "Competitors of the great proving," he said loudly. "The next trial begins today. Fire in the wild." The crowd murmured. The words alone carried danger. Rethar continued. You will journey to the burning valley, a place where the air is hot as metal, where the ground moves, and fire lives under the stone. You must cross it, bring back one ember from the great flame that never dies. He pointed toward the horizon where smoke rose in the far distance. The ember must be alive when you return. If it dies, you fail. You may go alone or in pairs. The valley will test your spirit more than your body, the warriors whispered among themselves. Some were confident, others uncertain. The burning valley was said to be home to strange storms, living fire and creatures that could melt steel. Milo stood at the edge of the crowd, listening carefully. He didn't feel fear, only curiosity. A fire that never dies, he thought. What could that mean? Into the heat by midday the warriors set out. The air shimmered with heat waves and the ground grew dark with ash and cracked stone. The closer they came to the burning valley, the heavier the air became, filled with smoke and the faint smell of iron. Milo walked beside a tall warrior named Torin, one of the reptilian species he had helped in the wilderness. Torin had insisted on joining him. You saved me before, Torin said. Now I walk beside you, Milo smiled. Then we watch each other's steps. Fair deal. The landscape soon turned red and gold. Lava rivers cut through the stone like glowing veins. The ground trembled softly under their feet. Sparks floated in the air like small glowing insects. Every now and then, they saw other competitors, silhouettes moving between smoke clouds climbing over rocks, or resting under glowing arches of melted glass. The first challenge by afternoon, the heat became intense. The air burned to breathe, and even the strongest warriors began to slow down. Torin's scales darkened from the temperature, and sweat covered Milo's face. We need shade, Torin said. Milo nodded. He scanned the land and found a large broken boulder nearby that formed a natural arch. Beneath it, a small pocket of shadow waited. They crawled inside. Milo took out his small water container and offered it. Torin shook his head. Keep it, he said. Your body needs more water than mine. Milo smiled faintly. Maybe, but we'll both last longer if we share. They took turns drinking small sips and rested while the lava rivers hissed around them. Suddenly, a deep roar shook the ground. A wall of flame rose nearby as the rock split open. From the crack, a massive creature of molten rock climbed out, a flame serpent, its body glowing with light. Torin reached for his plasma blade, but Milo held up a hand. Wait! The serpent's head turned toward them, its burning eyes bright as the sun. It hissed, spreading waves of heat that made the air shimmer. Most would have fought or run, but Milo simply crouched and studied the creature. He noticed that it didn't move randomly. It followed the flow of heat sliding toward the largest flames. It's not hunting, Milo said softly. It's feeding. The creature moved closer and Torin tensed. We cannot fight that thing. Milo took a small metal plate from his pack, the lid from his water container, and placed it on the ground, reflecting sunlight onto a nearby patch of burning rock. The light made that spot glow brighter. The serpent paused, then turned toward the reflection. Slowly, it slithered away, following the stronger heat source. Torin stared in shock. You tricked it, Milo smiled. No, I showed it something it liked better. Crossing the valley, they continued their journey through the burning fields. The heat was endless, but Milo moved carefully, resting when the ground cooled, saving his water, and wrapping his cloth around his mouth to filter the smoke. Torin followed his lead, slowly learning the Terran's methods. You think before each step, he said. Most of us just move forward, Milo shrugged. Sometimes moving slow means surviving longer. As night came, the valley glowed with fire instead of stars. The air was still hot but quieter. They built a small camp between two cooled lava ridges. Milo didn't make a flame. The valley itself gave enough light. While Torin rested, Milo looked up at the red sky. This place feels alive, he whispered. Like the planet has a heartbeat. He thought of Earth. The blue oceans, green forests, cold winds. So different from this fiery world. Yet somehow he felt connected to both. Maybe that was what humans were meant for, to find life everywhere, no matter how strange. The great flame, by the second day, the heat grew even stronger. The air seemed to move like liquid. The ground cracked under their boots. Finally, they reached a vast pit, the heart of the burning valley. At its center blazed the great flame, a column of light that rose like a living creature, burning without smoke or sound. It was beautiful, pure, endless fire, dancing gently as if breathing. Around the pit, Other warriors stood, some trying to collect the ember, others failing as their tools melted from the heat. Torin frowned. How can we take the ember if it burns everything? Milo watched for a long time, thinking. He noticed something. The flame pulsed like a rhythm. Every few seconds its brightness dimmed slightly and the heat lessened. He looked around and found a shard of black glass, thin but strong. He tied it to the end of his rope and waited for the next pulse. When the flame dipped, he swung the shard forward, catching a small spark at its tip before pulling it back quickly. The spark glowed but did not burn out. It rested gently on the glass like a living light. Milo grinned. Got it, Torin's eyes widened. You caught fire. With patience. Milo wrapped the shard in heat-resistant cloth and placed it carefully in a small container. Now we just have to keep it alive until we return. The return journey, the path back, was even harder. Smoke clouds blocked the way and the heat grew unstable. The ground cracked open again, forcing them to climb over broken rocks. Somewhere behind them, another warrior shouted in pain. Milo turned and saw a tall insectoid competitor trapped under a fallen rock. We can't leave them, Milo said, running toward the sound. Torin followed without question. Together they lifted the rock, freeing the trapped warrior. The insectoid's legs were injured and it could barely walk. Go, it said weakly. Leave me. Milo shook his head. No one gets left behind. He used his rope to tie the injured warrior's arm over Torin's shoulder. They moved slowly but steadily, step by step through the smoke. When they finally reached the edge of the valley, the signal tower rose in the distance, glowing blue, the endpoint. The embers still burned softly in Milo's hands. The camp of returners. They entered the camp. Silence fell. The other warriors turned to see them, the human, the reptilian, and the insectoid moving together, carrying each other's weight. Rethar stepped forward, astonished. You returned with others, and with the living ember. Milo opened the container carefully. Inside, the small flame flickered, warm and calm. The crowd gasped. Even the apex hunter, watching from the high platform, leaned forward slightly. Rethar's voice trembled with respect. How did you carry fire without it dying? Milo smiled softly. I didn't fight it. I listened to it. It wanted to burn but not destroy. You just have to understand the rhythm. The apex hunters praised later that night. When the fires of the camp burned low, the apex hunter himself appeared once again. His massive form glowed faintly under the red sky. He looked at the Terran and said, Many have walked into that valley. Few return. None have ever brought the living flame. Milo bowed slightly. It was not just me, sir. Torin and I helped each other, and we saved one more. Korvan's voice rumbled like thunder. You have shown courage and wisdom. You do not conquer the wild. You walk with it. That is rare. He turned to the crowd and raised his hand. Let it be known. The Terran teaches us that strength is not always in the arm, but in the heart that refuses to turn away. The warriors roared in approval. Even those who once laughed at Milo now shouted his name with respect. Milo smiled quietly and looked toward the stars. The fire inside his container flickered softly, as if alive, like a friend following him home. That night, as the camp grew quiet, Torin said softly, You make us see things differently, small one. Milo chuckled. Maybe that's what humans are for, to remind others that even small sparks can light great fires. And above them, from his high balcony, the apex hunter whispered to himself, The Terran's light does not fade. Perhaps he is not small after all. The sun rose cold and silver over Vor, signaling the beginning of the final trial, the silent hunt. The warriors gathered near the edge of the arena's outer lands, a vast forest unlike any they had seen before. Trees towered high, their branches twisting toward the sky, and the forest floor was thick with strange vines and glowing moss. Shadows shifted constantly, hiding shapes and sounds. Rethar, the apex hunter's second-in-command, stood in front of the competitors. The final trial is not for strength or fire, nor for endurance. It is a test of mind, patience, and understanding. You must track and tag the shadow beast, the most elusive creature in Vor. It moves without sound, blends with its surroundings, and cannot be forced into a corner. Whoever tags it first with skill and respect will be declared ready for the apex hunter's recognition. A murmur ran through the crowd. Many warriors drew weapons, claws, or other tools, most intended to rush the forest, relying on their power. Milo, however, packed lightly, Just a small knife, a coil of rope, and his notes. He looked at the trees and inhaled deeply. He did not feel fear. He felt curiosity. Entering the forest, the competitors entered the forest. Milo kept to the shadows, moving slowly, observing the sounds of wind, the vibration of the ground under his boots, and the faint scent of plants. Every step was careful, measured, and deliberate. The larger warriors moved fast, crashing through the undergrowth. Some of them startled the small creatures of the forest, leaving a trail of noise and confusion. The shadow beast they did not yet know was watching. Hours passed. Most warriors were already frustrated. Milo, in contrast, paused frequently, listening, smelling, and watching for patterns. Finally, he spotted it. A dark shape, larger than a wolf but smaller than a bear, slinking between the glowing moss. It was almost invisible, its shadow blending perfectly with the forest floor. Milo crouched low. He did not chase it. He did not shout or throw anything. He merely mirrored its movement, keeping at a safe distance. Every time the creature stopped, he stopped. When it circled a tree, he circled in the same rhythm. The lesson of patience. Some of the larger warriors tried to force the hunt. They charged through the forest, yelling or striking at trees. Each time the shadow beast vanished, leaving only faint footprints in the moss. Frustration grew. Milo, however, continued to move slowly, tracking the faint vibrations the creature left on the ground. His mind worked like a map, connecting every step to the last, predicting its movements not through strength but through observation. Hours turned into evening. The forest grew quiet, the light dimming beneath the thick branches. The creature stopped near a small pool of water, its reflection almost invisible against the dark moss. Milo knelt behind a tree and waited. He did not breathe heavily. He did not make a sound. His eyes followed the shadow beast's movements, learning its rhythm. Finally, after what felt like a long silence, he saw an opportunity. The beast paused, turning its head slightly, a chance to tag it gently without causing harm. Milo reached forward, his hand steady, and touched its fur softly. The shadow beast froze, then slowly lowered its head, almost as if acknowledging him. The forest seemed to exhale. Milo had passed the final test. The others returned. The larger warriors returned shortly after, exhausted, frustrated, and confused. None had touched the shadow beast. Some had injured themselves running through vines and brambles. Milo stood quietly, still touching the creature. It did not pull away. Instead, it let him stay, almost companionably. "Impossible," muttered one of the tallest warriors, a hulking alien with iron claws. "No one can approach that creature alive." Milo looked at him calmly. "You can't force the forest or its creatures," he said simply. "You have to understand it first." Some of the other competitors began to nod slowly. They had seen the way he moved. Careful, observant, respectful. The kind of patience few could master. The apex hunter appears. Suddenly, the ground trembled lightly. The trees around the competitors swayed, and a deep, resonant voice echoed from above. "The Terran has found the path of the hunt," said the apex hunter, Corvan, descending from a high branch onto the forest floor. His silver scales shimmered faintly in the dim light, and his presence made the forest feel both immense and silent. He looked at Milo and the shadow beast together. Many try to capture by force. Few ever succeed through understanding. "You understand?" Milo bowed slightly. "Thank you, sir." The other warriors standing behind him looked in awe. They had never seen the apex hunter move so calmly toward a competitor, and yet radiate such authority. Corvan extended one massive hand toward Milo. "You are ready to be recognized not for your size or power, but for your mind and spirit. You show us that true hunters respect life, even that which hides in shadow." The forest seemed to hold its breath as Milo looked up. Recognition, Corvan turned to the crowd of competitors. "Let it be known," he said, "that the Terran has proven something remarkable. Strength without understanding is empty. Wisdom without courage is incomplete. Here stands a being who has shown both." The warriors bowed their heads. Some who had laughed at Milo in the beginning now looked on with awe. They saw that the smallest competitor could teach the greatest lesson, that intelligence, patience, and respect could surpass brute strength. Milo felt a warmth rise in his chest. He had not set out to prove himself to anyone. He had only wanted to do his best and understand the challenges. Yet here in the forest of shadows he had earned something more. Respect, not just from the apex hunter but from the entire galaxy. The bond with the apex hunter Corvan stepped closer. His eyes glowed softly. "The galaxy has many hunters," he said. "Some conquer, some destroy. Few understand. You are kin to the path I walk. You do not need to hunt for glory. You hunt to learn and to survive together." Milo looked up, a faint smile on his face. Thank you, sir. I only tried to do what felt right." The apex hunter nodded. "Then your heart is strong. Your mind is sharp. And your spirit is unbreakable. This is rare in any species." He leaned down slightly, his massive hand brushing the ground. The shadow beast circled Milo once more, as if acknowledging the apex hunter's words. "You are small in size," Corvan continued, "but vast in ways the galaxy does not always understand. Walk forward, human, and remember, your choices can change worlds." The shadow beast. For a long while, Milo stayed with the shadow beast, observing it closely. He saw its subtle movements, how it listened to the wind and how it used the shadows to protect itself. "You're amazing," Milo whispered softly. "I don't think anyone has ever seen you this way before." The creature blinked its dark eyes slowly and padded away into the shadows. Milo watched it go, feeling a strange connection, not as a master over the creature but as someone who had earned its trust. From that moment on, he knew that the silent hunt was more than a test. It was a lesson that respect and understanding could overcome fear, and that sometimes the smallest being could do the greatest things. The return to camp. When Milo returned to camp, the forest seemed to part for him. The competitors who had remained there during the silent hunt gathered around, staring in awe. "You tagged it," one whispered. "You actually touched the shadow beast." "Yes," Milo said softly. "Not by force. By patience." The creatures of Vor, the ones that had laughed at him in the beginning, now looked at him differently. They saw not weakness, but courage, intelligence, and quiet strength. Even Torin, standing beside him, shook his head. You are incredible, Milo. I have learned more from you than anyone else here." Milo smiled faintly. "We all have something to learn from each other." The apex hunter's final words later that night, as the campfires flickered under the stars, Corvan descended once more. His massive shadow fell over Milo. "You have completed all trials," he said. "You have climbed, survived, and hunted with wisdom. You are no longer simply a Terran. You are kin to the apex hunter's path. Others may call you small, but I call you worthy." Milo bowed deeply. "Thank you, sir." "I am honored." Corvan's gaze swept across the camp. "Let all species know, greatness does not always come in size. It comes in courage, understanding, and heart." The warriors erupted in applause. Milo felt a warmth that was deeper than pride. He had earned respect, not through fear, strength, or weapons, but by being himself, clever, patient, and kind. The silent hunt had ended. The forest had taught him lessons no blade or claw could, and for the first time Milo felt truly at home among the stars. The final morning on Vor dawned calm and quiet. The air carried a faint scent of ash and dew, the twin moons fading into the sky. After the silent hunt, the camp was filled with a sense of anticipation. Every warrior who had survived the trials gathered in the central arena. At the highest platform overlooking the crowd stood the apex hunter, Corvan. His silver scales shimmered softly in the morning light. He had watched every trial, observing not only the skills but the hearts of the competitors. Among the warriors, all eyes sought Milo. The small Terran had already proven himself in every challenge. He had climbed the cliff of shifting gravity, survived the wilderness of Vor, carried the living ember from the burning valley, and completed the silent hunt. Yet Milo remained calm and quiet, as if each achievement was only a step in learning rather than a goal in itself. The gathering. The competitors assembled in the arena, the crowd of different species forming a living mosaic of scales, fur, wings, and armor. Murmurs filled the air, and even those who had once laughed at Milo now looked on with respect and wonder. Rathar, the apex hunter's second in command, stepped forward. "Warriors of the Great Proving," he called, his voice echoing across the arena. "All trials have ended. Today, The apex hunter will recognize the competitor who has shown the highest mastery of mind, body, and spirit. The crowd fell silent. Many glanced at each other nervously, hoping to be chosen, yet secretly wondering who could match the Terran's calm intelligence and courage. Milo stood quietly at the center, his small frame seeming even smaller compared to the towering warriors around him. He adjusted the strap of his pack, feeling the weight of his tools and notes. Simple items, yet items that had carried him through the trials. The apex hunter speaks from his high platform. Corvan descended slowly, each movement deliberate and commanding. When he reached the ground, the silence was absolute. Even the wind seemed to pause, as though the world itself waited to hear his words. "The great proving has tested many things," Corvan said, his voice deep and resonant. "Strength, endurance, courage. Many have fallen and many have risen. But the one who walks not only with skill but with understanding, that one is truly worthy of recognition." His golden eyes settled on Milo. The small human did not flinch. He simply stood tall as a Terran could, and met the apex hunter's gaze. "You," Corvan continued, "have climbed where others failed, survived where others would have perished, and faced creatures not with force but with respect. You have shown that true strength comes not from size, weapons, or armor, but from the mind and heart combined." The crowd gasped. Even the warriors who had trained their entire lives to conquer the trials now looked at Milo with awe. Recognition. Corvan lowered himself to Milo's level, his massive hand brushing the ground as if to make his presence less intimidating. "Terran," he said, "you have not only passed the proving, you have taught us something no trial could measure: patience, respect, and courage. You are not prey, nor are you simply a competitor. You are kin, the kind of being worthy to walk among hunters as equal." Milo bowed deeply, feeling a warmth that went beyond pride. "I am honored, sir. I did what I thought was right." Corvan nodded. "That is all that is needed. Wisdom comes not from seeking glory, but from understanding the world around you and the life within it." From the crowd, cheers rose, louder than any Milo had ever heard. Warriors who had once mocked him now shouted his name with pride. Even the shadow beast from the silent hunt appeared at the edge of the arena, its dark shape visible among the trees, as if acknowledging Milo's achievement. The gathering of allies as the applause continued. Warriors from the previous trials came forward, stepping beside Milo. Torin, the reptilian who had shared the burning valley with him, stepped forward and bowed. "You have shown me how to survive with respect, not force," he said. The insectoid warrior from the same trial nodded, holding its hands in a gesture of respect. "You taught me patience. We will not forget." Other competitors, large, small, strong, and clever, came together around him. Milo realized then that he was not alone. Though he was small, he had inspired cooperation, trust, and friendship among the galaxy's greatest warriors. For the first time, Milo understood what it truly meant to be part of something greater. The apex hunter's final test. Corvan spoke again. "Before you are officially recognized, one final task remains. You must choose a path for the future of hunters. Will you hunt only for glory, only for power, or will you show that understanding and cooperation are the highest skills of all?" Milo looked around at the crowd, at the faces of those who had doubted him, and at the creatures of the forest and the burning valley that had guided him. He thought of the shadow beast, of Torin, of the lessons he had learned in the wilderness. "I will choose," Milo said clearly, "to walk with respect, to learn, and to help others do the same. Strength is nothing if it is not shared wisely." The apex hunter's eyes glowed brighter. "Then you are truly ready." A symbol of kinship. Corvan extended a massive hand, placing it gently on Milo's shoulder. Though the hand was enormous, it caused no harm, only a sense of warmth and acceptance. "You are no longer simply a Terran," Corvan said. "You are kin to the hunters of the galaxy. Others may look at your size and think it matters, but I have seen your heart. That is what defines you." Milo looked up at the apex hunter, feeling a connection unlike any he had known. "I will do my best to honor this," he said. "You already have," Corvan replied. "Now walk forward, human. The galaxy has much to learn from you." The celebration. The crowd erupted once more, but this time the sound was different. There was no laughter of disbelief, no mockery. There was only respect, pride, and wonder. Warriors clapped, stomped, and raised their voices in celebration. Even the creatures of Vor, Some watching from the forest's edge, one seemed to acknowledge Milo. Torin leaned close to Milo. "I don't think I've ever met anyone like you," he said quietly. Milo smiled softly. "Maybe that's because we humans are not always the strongest, but we can still teach and learn in ways others cannot." The insectoid warrior nodded. "And now you've taught all of us." A small Terran among giants, Milo looked around at the massive warriors who had once laughed at him. He saw them differently now. They were not just rivals or obstacles. They were part of a larger world, a world full of strength, intelligence, and courage. And he had earned their respect without lifting a weapon against any of them. He realized that being small did not mean being weak. Being small could mean seeing things others overlooked, thinking differently, and earning trust where fear had once ruled. The apex hunter stepped aside, allowing Milo to stand in the center of the arena. The golden light of dawn reflected off Korvan's scales, bathing the human in brilliance. "You are small in stature," Korvan said to the assembly, "but vast in spirit. Let all beings know that the smallest among us can achieve greatness beyond measure." Milo felt a quiet pride. Not pride of ego, but pride of having done what was right, of having learned, and of having earned the trust of those who had doubted him. The parting words as the crowd dispersed, Milo stood quietly, gazing at the horizon. The trials had ended, but the lessons would remain forever. Korvan approached him one last time. "Remember, Terran," he said, "your journey is only beginning. Many challenges lie ahead. You have earned kinship today, but true mastery is in how you choose to walk forward." Milo nodded. "I will remember, sir. I will do my best." The apex hunter gave a small nod and turned, his massive form moving silently toward the forest edge. Milo watched him go, feeling a sense of awe and inspiration. The legacy of a small Terran. That night, Milo sat under the stars, the wind carrying the faint scent of the burning valley and the forest. He thought of the cliffs, the wilderness, the fire, and the shadow beast. He thought of the lessons he had learned and the friends he had made. Though he was small, he had proven that size and strength were not the only measures of greatness. Intelligence, patience, courage, and respect could surpass even the mightiest of warriors. And somewhere deep in the galaxy, the apex hunter had welcomed him as kin, a recognition more valuable than any medal, flame, or trophy. Milo smiled softly, looking up at the stars. "Small sparks," he whispered, "can light the darkest skies." The galaxy had seen him, the small Terran, and it had learned that greatness often comes in the most unexpected forms.